Hello there, welcome, and thank you for joining us today for how technology is disrupting the real estate industry. My name is Vishal Vibhakar, and I'm with Front. And we're really excited. We have a really great webinar today with some awesome speakers. And thank you so much for joining us. Let's get to it. So today's speakers are going to be Anderson Yu, Head of Research at Front, Joe Kenny, Senior U.S. Sales Consultant at Pipedrive, and Julia Pila, Head of Real Estate Partnerships at Zeus. And the way today's session will work is, as you have questions, just add them to chat. There'll be plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. And at the very end of this, we'll send you out a recording of the webinar, so you can expect that to come in your inbox shortly after. And here's the agenda. So we'll start off with the introduction, an overview of tech and its relationship to real estate. And then we'll go into our slides and the topics that we'll be discussing today with each of our speakers covering an aspect of it. And then, as I mentioned, there'll be a Q&A at the end. So to get things started, I'd like to ask Anderson, who's from Front. What's Front? Let our listeners know a little bit more about the product.
Yeah, so excited to be here today. So a quick little blurb about Front. Front is here to reinvent email for the way teams work. Front brings your email, your team, and all of your apps really into one inbox so you can work more efficiently and deliver ultimately a better customer experience. So we've seen property managers, brokers, agents, and I think now almost 5,000 or maybe over 5,000 businesses rely on Front to accomplish more as a team. Back to you.
Great, thanks, Anderson. Pipedrive. Joe, can you tell us what Pipedrive is?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, thanks for having us. Pipedrive is a CRM tool. It's based off, there's a pipeline management and activity-based selling. And so the whole idea is that we want to build out a visual representation of your sales process so you can more intuitively see where things are, and then really focus on activities. So Pipedrive is built with this idea of activity-based selling. So we believe that's the way to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. And so between building a pipeline and keeping track of your activities, ultimately we just help small and medium teams, scaling teams really just close more deals.
Awesome. And Zeus, really excited to have Zeus join us today, as they are at the forefront of really what technology and real estate and the intersection of the two. Julia, can you tell us more about how Zeus works?
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it. And just a little plug, we use Front and Pipedrive, so love you guys. But yeah, so Zeus is essentially a tech-driven property manager. So what we're doing is we're kind of creating a marketplace for reinventing property management on the owner-landlord side, and then converting our places into kind of a new age corporate housing. So we care a lot about experience and living as a service, and we're doing that one property at a time.
Awesome. That's great. Now let's get started. To start things off, I just wanted to give an overview of the topic and really why we brought together these great speakers, and really what we see happening of the real estate industry. Now, as you probably know, just about every industry is experiencing changes with tech, and real estate is no different. Every step of the real estate process is now affected by technology. Drones are providing footage of homes, making elevated imagery both possible and affordable. Advertising has become much more efficient with digital marketing, with electronic document signing apps and automated emails. The time spent on a sale has become significantly reduced. Then you have the rise of mobile apps. This has allowed shoppers to narrow down their searches, keep tabs on the fluctuation in the market, and set notifications so that they can be alerted as soon as a new property is listed or there's a change in the price. Today, over 70% of customers look for homes online, and more than half of those house tours are booked through a website. 85% of real estate agents say that they use text message as a form of method to communicate with their clients, and 80% say that they're comfortable using social media. Data is also playing a big part. School data, 3D virtual tours, demographics, time stats have become easily available. In fact, data has never been as easily accessible. Clients are now informed, prepared, and aware as soon as they enter a property. According to PwC's Early Trend Report for Real Estate, we're getting to a point where if people don't recognize technologies and if they're not able to integrate them, they're going to be missing out and money is going to be lost. Actually, a recent Forbes article said that the real estate industry, which is the world's largest commodity at $217 trillion, will soon be overtaken by technologies like virtual reality, cloud computing, and the blockchain. So this is definitely a hot topic. As I mentioned, tech is really taking over the world, and real estate is, I think, at the forefront of a lot of changes, and we're really excited to be able to talk about this topic today with these great speakers who will each be covering their own section. But to start things off, I really want to ask each of our speakers to name a prediction for the future of the real estate industry. So Anderson, I'd like to start off with you. What is one prediction that you see happening with real estate?
Yeah, super great question. I think you already touched on this just in what you were saying just now. I think blockchain ultimately is going to be a really cool technology and definitely a trend that we hear a lot about. If blockchain is able to fulfill its promise in the real estate sector, I think it can ultimately bring security, transparency, and efficiency to real estate transactions. Just to sort of cover it in its most basic form, blockchain makes it possible for the first time ever for people and companies to make major transactions without having to go through intermediaries or like middlemen like credit card service companies, stock exchanges, banks, or governments. There are a few ways that I think blockchain will shape the future of the real estate industry through tokenization, smart contracts, and property titles. So I'll cover each of these briefly. So tokenization is democratizing ownership of assets by using cryptocurrency. That was is maybe still the huge hype that everybody's talking about, to help split up assets into tokens that are stored on a blockchain. This gives landlords the ability to sell off just a portion of their property. For investors, they can then resell their shares on the open market through secondary exchanges. And for people in different regions or in different tax brackets, we're now making it more accessible for them to invest in opportunities that were previously unattainable for them. So really expanding access to real estate. For smart contracts, it's a transaction using smart contract is completed entirely between the buyer and the seller. So you're removing the middleman. And in that process, you can sort of speed up the transaction and reduce the chance for fraud. So what this does is it would, essentially how it would work is sellers would provide all the details of a property, the buyer inputs all the necessary information on a 100% encrypted and secure block, and then through computer protocols, they can then validate the legitimacy of the information, approve the transaction, and then have everything go super well and super smoothly and efficiently. And lastly, on the property title side, so the title insurance, I believe, is a $15 billion industry, and it ensures at the end of the day, buyers that their property is clear of old liens and debts. But if we think about decentralizing this information on the blockchain, a ton of time and money could ultimately be saved and potentially eliminate the need for title insurance altogether. You could think about adding information like damages, onto the blockchain. So it's more kind of like a Carfax for homes, and allowing new occupants to know the exact history of their property. Now, the challenge here is that we're gonna have to rally municipalities and local governments to work together and organize to input all this information and make it accessible and readily available to everybody. But yeah, that's sort of my 2 cents on blockchain. Vishal, back to you. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Anderson. That's really interesting. I want to touch on that actually a little bit more at the end of this section, but to keep things moving, I'd like to ask Julia the exact same question. What is one trend that you see shaping the future of the industry?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, there are so many exciting things happening in real estate and technology, and it totally makes sense because real estate is such a high touch space. If you think about real estate in general, whether it's like sales, rental, residential, commercial, retail, those spaces are meant for some sort of human interaction at some point, or the need for human touch at some point. So it makes a lot of sense that it's such a hot kind of market to be in for technology. I mean, it's kind of crazy in the Bay Area. We still work with so many landlords that you know expect paper leases to be signed and they want paper checks. And it sounds a little bit crazy, but it's like we're in one of the most technologically savvy cities in the world, and still people, it's still, despite like a lot of the stats that Vishal shared at the beginning, like it is a really high touch sector to be in. And then if you think of like sales with real estate agents, all the work that they're doing is still so manual. I mean, that's a human. People still mostly use real estate agents to sell their properties, and the work of those agents is all manual work. So there's so many major technologies. There's systems for digital contracts, payment systems, fractional property investment, so like crowdsourcing to be able to invest in properties, making that more accessible. But the thing that I kind of wanted to focus on is the sharing economy, and that is kind of one of the reasons. It is one of the reasons why we started our company, and that's kind of like our North Star, and one of the things we really believe in. So if you think of the sharing economy, it's really a part of all of our lives now. I mean, with ride sharing, and we're making it easy to live a different type of life. So we, as a company, really believe that in the future, people will see success in a different way. So right now and in the past, it's been like settling down, owning a house, owning a car, having a lot of assets to yourself. But with the sharing economy, we're actually visualizing a future where incentives are different, and people want to live global lives and be able to travel and be really asset light. And so success doesn't necessarily mean like settling down anymore. It means being able to live a global life. So people and companies are making it easier. Like companies are really incentivizing their employees to be able to work abroad and to live globally. And any tech company that's helping assist that is part of this sharing economy. Co-working spaces like WeWork and again, ride sharing and all of these things are a part of it. So we really see that as kind of like the future, and it's where we see living as a service included in that.
Vishal, you're muted still.
Sorry, keep doing that. That's really interesting because I recently was listening to the podcast "How I Built This" with the Rent the Runway founder, and she was saying how she wants everyone's closet to live in the cloud. And Julie, I think the thing that you're talking about, where we may not ever need to buy our own furniture, we would just rent it, and the same goes with properties, right? It's just really awesome to see kind of like the efficiencies that come about when you are basically renting, not necessarily having to buy a ton of clothes, a ton of furniture. We've already seen this, like you mentioned, with ride shares and things like that. So I think that's really exciting with real estate. Joe, how about yourself? Can you tell us about one tech trend that you think is going to shape the future of the real estate industry?
Yeah, so I chose automation. The reason for that, so I speak to salespeople in all industries. And one thing I think that's common is that we're being torn in a million different directions as far as like how can I most effectively spend my time. Like for Pipedrive, we get a ton of people in the real estate business, and I think especially for them, you're getting just torn in every direction. You're getting leads from more places without keeping them in one place, and really pouncing on that opportunity, right? And so I think automation is helping a lot of salespeople, people in all industries, but especially in real estate, sort of define their processes and and then automate them to a point where I'm not doing that manual, right? Like I always say, I'm in sales because I can't do anything else, right? And so I need to be able to, I'm in sales because I can do manual work or because I'm like necessarily a technologist. I want to make it as easy as possible. So I think automation just helps people stay on the phone or stay out showing houses and really take all the guesswork and having all these separate systems in different places. So like on a broad level, like we just implemented automation, but we've been using tools like Zapier for years to sort of just more effectively build out our processes. We just spend more time what we do on what we do well. And then a lot of real people in the real estate that I've spoken to, that's sort of connected with that idea. Just put as much automation there as possible, and then ultimately keep it simple.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's also you mentioned Zapier. There's obviously Pipedrive, automating a lot of tasks and manual work. Um, Julie, I had a question for you. You mentioned, people are still asking for paper documents. People are still wanting to do things a little bit more manual. Obviously, we know that automation is an answer, but it seems like the real estate industry is just starting to pick up some of these things. How do you overcome those challenges and getting people to adapt to things like automation?
That's a great point. It's not always so easy, but we feel like, I mean, it's kind of our duty as a tech-driven property manager, which is, it's a different experience for landlords and residents to have, a real estate company that is focusing on tech. But if we make it a part of our process, and if we can show that it makes their lives easier and it makes there be way less friction, again, like the reality of finding an apartment in San Francisco is still on Craigslist. Finding an apartment in New York is like street easy, or hiring a leasing agent that you have to pay a lot of money to. All of these types of things, if we can prove that like it can be done without that, and it can be done really well, and we can find you exactly what you're looking for, then we see that as a success. Back to kind of what you were mentioning about the furniture as well. Like we really do envision a world where people don't buy furniture for rental properties anymore. That is not something you have to waste your money on and then deal with like subleasing or deal with the hassles and the costs associated with moving that. So if we can show this service that's easier and better for people, that's kind of our goal. So it's a lot of education, but yeah, we've converted a lot of owners for sure, to get more on board with tech and property management.
I wanted to follow up based off of what Anderson said, and again, I'm going to come back to Julia because you're in the center of this space. Are you noticing, and Anderson mentioned that blockchain, it's all about the fulfillment of its promise, right? There's obviously all these exciting things that can happen, but there's not as many examples of real world, real life scenarios, at least not today. Are you seeing anything happen? Does your company have any sort of like thesis around blockchain, or do you experience it with your clients?
Disclaimer, I am a resident non-techie here in Silicon Valley, so getting into a conversation with me about blockchain is going to be a very big letdown for you. But that being said, not at the moment. So we've thought about it internally. We've discussed it, like being applied to our contracts, for instance. Like that's definitely something that might be really helpful and really useful for us in the future. At our current scale, it doesn't make too much sense based off of all of our other priorities. But and we do use like third-party companies like for payments and for contract coordination and stuff at the moment. But absolutely, like in the future and at scale, at kind of a global scale, it's something that will become a priority of ours.
Cool. Yeah. That's good to know. I also am not an expert in the field, so Anderson, really appreciate you breaking all of that down. I think we're ready to move on to the next section, and it's speeding up the sales process. And I think Joe will be leading this section. Really, how tech is speeding up the sales process for the real estate industry. Joe, can you take this away? Joe,
Oh, there we go.
there we go.
Yeah, so I think one of the main takeaways, like in our experience here, like at Pipedrive especially, you get a lot of people that are, I guess this is a theme we keep coming back to. There's a lot of different technology out there, but the ultimate goal is to make things simpler at its core, and it's easy to get lost in all the different options you have. So things like a CRM for Pipedrive in particular, we just want to keep it simple so that you log in, you know what you have to do. And so, like I was mentioning when I first introduced Pipedrive, is the whole idea is to be able to identify where people are in my process, what I should focus my time on. The things like spreadsheets. I know a lot of times people in the real estate industry are sort of being dragged along. Like Julian mentioned before, like my landlord in New York City, I still walk 20 blocks to go hand in my rent check, and so a lot of them are coming along slower. But I think if you can show the benefit with something like a CRM, where rather than using a spreadsheet or pen and paper, I have a tool that's designed to just help me focus on exactly what I need to do next and what my highest priority task is next, because it's easy to get lost in those systems. So over time, things like spreadsheets can become it's untenable, writing things on paper. So CRM, even though I work for a CRM company, but I do believe that that helps speed things up because it's designed to help you focus on what you need to do next, especially when people are coming at you from all directions. AI as well, artificial intelligence. It's not something that we incorporate in our current version of the product right now. But I think in general, we're using like machine learning to learn about salespeople and what makes the most effective ones effective, and also using tools like using AI to sort of chat with people on the website to help you gather more leads, right? To help you bring in more inbound requests, so that's less time you have to spend doing it, right? And the whole point again, to make it simple and spend your time where you're most effective, on the phone, whatever that may be. And I guess so. It says multiple sales pipelines here. I guess this is kind of tied back to our product specifically, but the whole idea is to build a specific. Pipedrive is very customizable, right? And I know a lot of other tools are as well. But to make it as specific to your process, so that you're not learning someone else's process, you're not using someone else's tools, you can make it really match what you do. So you can build a sales pipeline built with your exact process. And so it just helps you spend less time trying to figure out what you need to do next, right? And it's all about making it to help you stay focused. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. Joe, you mentioned that at Pipedrive you have a big portion of your customer group are folks in the real estate industry. Is it any specific type of persona? Is it property managers? Is it brokers? Are they agents? Or is it just uh, kind of all over the place? And can you name some like specific ways that they're leveraging Pipedrive?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's crazy. Like even within an industry, the way people use our tool just varies wildly, right? Because I wouldn't say it's one specific role. I would say it's like a specific point in time in a company. So either a company's just started out and they start getting leads, and like I mentioned with spreadsheets, right? You can keep track of your leads and your deals for a while. There's a certain point when it breaks down and you become conscious of the fact that like I'm leaving money on the table, right? And so we'll get a lot of people that are scaling who realize that they're just leaking revenue because they can't stay focused on it. And then we'll find people that on the other end of things, maybe got a tool that's a little too complex for what they needed, maybe bought some enterprise software. And again, that sweet spot is right in the middle where we want to keep it simple. So you know what I mean? So people that bought it, maybe a tool that's too complex for them, or they didn't have a tool at all that was sort of breaking down for them. We want to give them something simple enough to use, because again, real estate people and salespeople in general just won't use a tool if it's too complicated. So I guess people looking for simplicity, to give you the short answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. I wanted to touch a little bit more on AI, on artificial intelligence, and specifically with machine learning. And so, for those of you who don't know what machine learning is, it's basically it's a tool of AI, and it's basically a way where you're making computers learn with data without programming them to do it. So you're creating kind of like this computer that's able to learn and then take on more data and then make even more calculated sort of guesses or predictions or whatever it may be. And I think this is actually really interesting, especially when it comes to real estate. Some examples that I was digging up and researching this was ML software, machine learning, ML for short, can recognize patterns in data to help generate insights, for example, of when a property can all of a sudden become popular. So it's basically predicting kind of a neighborhood or a sector where a certain property may rise in value before even a human can predict that using the data that you feed it. Another example is ML can streamline the negotiation process by predicting where a price compromise is likely to occur. This is pretty scary, but pretty cool, actually. So brokers can have the exact information of when two parties are about to kind of settle on a price and use that basically to not overprice or underprice a specific specific property. And so I think AI is really, we've noticed it taking over a lot of different industries. But really, when it comes to real estate, you could definitely see the impact on dollars that this could have. I wanted to ask Anderson because I know he likes, he's been researching this a lot for Front. How AI is impacting Front as a product, and what are some of the things that kind of Joe touched on that you're seeing being used at Front?
Yeah, great question. So, we like on the floor here, we hear a lot about AIs replacing humans, and sort of in the context of an inbox, AI is doing, all the work. Maybe one day you don't even have to open your inbox and things are just happening. That would be quite the world, but we're far, far from it. And I don't, ultimately, I don't think that AIs are going to replace humans. The underlying philosophy that we operate on here at Front is that like how we work is broken. The goal of Front is to sort of humanize the inbox experience for knowledge workers so that they can work happier and then sort of in turn pass that happiness on over to their customers. And that's just not something that AIs can do at that point. They can't, I think Joe might have said this before, like they can't hold that relationship or AIs can't sort of replace that human relationship that a human is able to have with their customers. In terms of how I think technology sort of influencing maybe sales transactions with customers, there's like the saying where customers are always right, and I think that sort of saying is exacerbated by technology. You think about what the underpinning of success for sales is you want to deliver a great sales experience so they will purchase your product. And with technology now, you're sort of expanding the scope of what that means. You want to go to where your customers are comfortable at. So now you have all these different communication channels, and then customers also are raising the bar. They expect you to be able to deliver a great experience no matter where they're coming from. So that sort of in turn becomes a really hard cycle to maintain and then scale, right? How do you then offer all of these different channels, but then manage it in a way that you're able to deliver this amazing sales experience so you can convert them? Super tough. And I think, small plug here for Front, but we see actually a lot of non-tech sales team come to Front to stay competitive with even other technology providers. So we have companies like logistics brokers, freight brokers, auto dealerships, manufacturers of like pool parts. These are all, and also of course, like real estate and property managers, they're coming to Front to stay competitive within their own space. So yeah, I think that's my thought. That's what we're seeing here, specifically, talking to our customers.
Nice, that's really interesting. Julia, can you speak on some of the tech that you're using to speed up the sales process at Zeus?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we're a great use case for what Anderson was just talking about. We are not selling technology, so our sales process is very multidimensional. And it's more of just like a whole experience of using Zeus, whether you are an owner or a resident. So we have kind of two sides because we function like a marketplace. So to our owners, like our sales cycle is like, how do we get leads, or how do we find the types of leads that we want? So for instance, like we make a lot of in-house technologies as well. We used to cold call rental listings that are available online, and we ended up like putting that in our platform system in a map view so that our salespeople can easily get access to good pre-vetted leads in locations that we want. And we work really closely with our data science team because pricing is really important for us and numbers are important. We are offering master leases to our owners, so we carry the vacancy risk. And then once we convert it into a corporate rental, we need to make sure that the numbers work on the corporate side in the corporate market, which is a totally different market than the unfurnished long-term rental market. So, I mean, data science is like a core to our the success of our business, and will be for for the future of it as well, just to make sure that we know and collect all the information on this pricing so it can be perfect. We also, like on our website, use things like VR, like 3D tours, so that people don't have to do in-person tours. And that was something that we used to do in-person tours with everything at first because people didn't trust us, and that's uncomfortable for someone to sign a mid to long-term contract without going and viewing the place. There's a lot of trust that needs to be built. So how can we use technology to have trust on our booking side is important. And a lot of the companies we work with, because we are in the kind of unsexy corporate housing sector, these are old school businesses that are in the space, and they don't really use much tech. So we're also educating them and trying to find out from them what would actually make their processes more useful. And so, a lot of learning and figuring it out and figuring where we can really make a difference. And it's a lot of buy-in as well. So listening to people where the inefficiencies are and the frustrations, and then we can, build for that, and we can collect data and build something that people want.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really interesting. I love the 3D tours, VR aspect of things. I think we're probably going to hear a little bit more about that coming up. But yeah, thank you all for that. Now moving on, the rise of apps and software in real estate. Before I move on to the next slide, I just want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box at the end of this section, or sorry, at the end of the webinar. We'll reserve some time for some questions. So just a FYI there. So the rise of apps and software. Anderson, take it away.
Yeah, so this is I'm so passionate about this space. First off, like the real estate industry, especially Bay Area, it's super competitive. And thinking about the intersection of software and apps in this space is super interesting. So the first one I want to touch on is mobile apps. So we all know that with the rise of like iPhones and like these flip phones that Samsungs are offering, today's consumers are heavily mobile dependent. And we see this within our own customer base and with our own product as well. They expect to be able to do everything on their mobile device, from ordering food, getting a ride, shopping for clothes, all these things. When it comes to buying and selling or renovating a home, prospective home buyers are also increasingly demanding the same capabilities, so they can have just access to all their information no matter where they are. It's become like status quo. So mobile apps in the real estate are used in a multitude of ways. It can be used to notify agents and clients of the latest properties, but they also include a lot of helpful information like comps for the areas, ability to virtually check in or check out neighborhood amenities. And of course, if you're like ready to do an in-person tour, then you can obviously book with a real estate agent. And even then, with some of these companies, they then have partnerships with financing companies. So like you can start exploring what your financial options look like, all directly from your mobile application, which is like, think about it, from maybe 10 years ago, that was never possible. You would have to send so many emails. Maybe the process would take, upwards of 30 days to maybe a couple months. this is now all done within this confine of your phone, and that's like really crazy. Now, if you think about some of the players out there, right, you have Zillow and also Redfin, who've set pretty high bars for mobile applications. And they've disrupted the real estate industry by creating this platform that houses all, like just what I said before, a multitude and all this digital information for real estate, so you can discover different properties, understand the value, assess what your mortgage looks like potentially and your financing options, and so much more. I don't know about you guys, but like one of my favorite pastimes that I like to do, like when I wake up or go to sleep, is I have Redfin on my phone. I just like open it up, get the unaffordable houses around, but it's like super interesting to just within a couple of clicks on my phone, I'm able to like have a pretty good picture of what my neighborhood looks like, what's happening around, and then just have a gauge of like what is happening even on the market. And something else that happens is when I go international or when I go abroad, like I travel to a new city, I actually like to open up Redfin as well, or whatever property app that I have on my phone, to understand what is this neighborhood, like what are the homes here, how do real estate agents talk about and position these properties. So like maybe there's really interesting neighborhoods for me to check out. All this information is now so accessible through these mobile devices, and I think that's just so fascinating. So, and I know here that we also say thumbtack and handy. So, sort of broadening out technology and real estate, you're also seeing like sort of other companies that have sort of tangential relationships to real estate markets, like Thumbtack and Handy, who sort of play a part in like hiring a contractor for small jobs. These are all things that are enabled via mobile devices now as well. And then I kind of want to actually jump on over to the virtual reality thing, because Julia, you talked about this, and this is also something that was super interesting as I went through sort of like moving to a new place and looking at furniture, right? Like virtual reality and augmented reality was like this new thing that I was able to take advantage of. So when I like thought about my new space, moving into this empty place, what are the things that I want to put in this space, right? Now you have to go to an IKEA or you go online, and one of the scary things about going online is you have no idea what this is going to look like in relations to other furniture that you might have in your space already. I think that's what virtual reality and augmented reality has solved for. It allows you, for example, Wayfair allows you to be able to scan your space and then be able to put this virtual piece of furniture in your space, so you can actually see it in the context of the other furnitures that you have around. You could do and I think, Julia, you guys will be able to speak to this as well, but the sort of 360 video or walking tours that real estate sites have like offered to people, like these are just the beginnings of what technology is going to be able to provide people, so that they can really make decisions on their own time. And that agents ultimately don't have to spend time and money to stage a space. Potentially that's like another sort of piece of the future. So yeah, I think those are really two awesome things that I want to touch on for this. Back to you, Vishal.
Thanks, Anderson. Yeah, I think IKEA has an app called the IKEA Place, where you could basically look at a room as if you're taking a picture with your phone, and you could place different types of furniture in that room to see what it would look like. And so I think that's really awesome. And with VR, as we were preparing for this webinar, I was doing a little bit of research on that, and it's pretty amazing, because we've gone past highly digitalized photos. We've gone past actually 360 tours, and we're doing VR in the way where you can actually walk into a home, see how high the shower is, walk around the neighborhood, because we have drone footage of those areas, and really experience the home or the property without actually even being there. And I think this has actually been highly impactful for international people, or just people far away from the property that they're looking at, where they can actually get a really good sense of the area, of the neighborhood, of the property. And then it's made the process, I think, going back to speeding up the sales process, I think this has made the process a lot faster, where agents can and do multiple tours at a time and really let the tours take care of itself, and they don't have to worry about the cost of staging a property, or anything like that if it's all done through augmented reality or virtual reality. And then going back to your point about like the apps, just to answer your question, I do the exact same thing with Redfin. I think as this webinar has been going on, I had at least like 2 or 3 Redfin notifications of properties in my search criteria. And the funny thing is, like, I'm not very close or pretty far away from buying something, but you could see the impact that has, when you think about like top of funnel, where I may not be years away from purchasing a home, but I still have those notifications on. I haven't turned them off. It is a fun little thing for me to do, to kind of scan out a neighborhood, and really just envision what it would be like to live in a specific property. So I think this section, all these points that you touched on, I understand, are really, really fascinating and really cool, actually. I think, Julie, I want to actually ask you about like apps and software. Obviously, we mentioned these things, and you touched on VR in the past, and Zillow, Redfin are really much more, probably not at all related to the area that you work and live in. What are some of the apps that you're using, or software that your customers are leveraging today?
I mean, they totally are relevant to us. First and foremost, I mean, the question I was thinking of is like, how has our business changed at Zeus from these things? And just one kind of overarching thing is that we chose to run our business as a tech business. We knew that there was no other choice if we wanted to scale really fast and quickly and build an amazing business. We had no other choice but to use technology and be really open to constantly iterating and testing things. And our CEO, for instance, made the decision to work with 2 technical co-founders instead of hire like a real estate person to build the business with. So it's really cool that we have this full property management company that they built, and they're tech people traditionally. So it's always, it really just like leads most of our decision making. But like we still have pivoted and changed a lot of things based off of what software is available to us. So yeah, I mean, on our website, like being able to do digital tours, it's also allowed us to certain data that we have access to online, like things like Redfin, like things like the data that's on Zillow, Google Map views, sound maps, crime maps, things like this. They allow us to actually sign properties sight unseen. So we used to go and view all of our properties, and of course, that's super high touch and not necessarily really scalable. So things like that have really like revolutionized the business, and it's because we have access to all this cool data. And another really interesting thing is there's no equivalent to the MLS for rentals. So finding data on rentals is nearly impossible because it's not documented anywhere. So it's our responsibility to do all of the needed research and to look in all these places to determine where to sign properties, where our residents are going to love them. Other types of like softwares and apps that we're really focusing on right now is like field apps and field software. So, a big part of our business is going to be humans always, because there's a need for cleaners, until we make robot cleaners fully usable, but I don't think it'll happen. So I think there will be a need for humans always. And to make that more efficient, if we could schedule cleaners to, if they could get pinged and get places to clean all in the same vicinity instead of driving all around, like that's a huge time suck for them, and it's not the most efficient way to like manage their own businesses. So we also guide in that way. Same for like people doing handiwork and all of our field work, basically using apps and being smarter with data helps us become more efficient. And then, yeah, of course, like, I mean, we have internal like automated contracts now. We used to not have that. Any sort of API that we can use to automate is obviously very helpful. And then a lot of our internal, we're building a lot of our own tech. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even realized that the lack of data on rentals. We think so much about like the the overwhelming amount of data that you find on Zillow and Redfin, but it's almost like you at Zeus are kind of building that out and at the forefront of that. So that's really exciting. Okay, let's move on to the next section, improving the tenant experience. And Julia will lead this slide. So Julia, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've touched upon a lot of these items, but our tenant experience is our number one priority alongside our owner experience. So we think of our customers again with this like duality of our supply and demand side. Everyone needs to be happy. They're kind of like two full businesses that are running, one as a property management master leasing option for owners, totally hands off, and then on the other side of things, running this new age um, corporate housing option for business travelers. So um, everything we do that we can utilize tech to make it easier for our customers is absolutely vital. For instance, like if you think of the current way that residents, or we call them residents, but tenants find apartment rentals, we touched upon this earlier. It's totally manual. You have to go out and get, references. Sometimes you have to go get a cashier's check from the bank. Sometimes you have to write your own check. You have to get your credit scores put together. You have to do a paper application. It's all these annoying things that, like, I don't know who has time to do that anymore. I mean, when I looked for an apartment in San Francisco, it was such a pain to like get all this stuff together, and then it's competitive. So you're like dealing. You don't even know if you're going to get this place at the end. It's really frustrating. We've implemented like Net Verify and Experian into our booking process so that people just do it like within their booking process and it happens pretty much automatically rather than kind of the old school way. Um, and again, we care equally about our owner experience. So if any of you are landlords who are listening in, we know that the realities of that experience are in a lot of ways not so great, and so we're tackling that market, trying to be super hands off and provide that. Another really crazy thing about our process is there are so many different touch points that any of our customers could have within our company. So, for instance, like from the second an owner submits their property on our site, they work with the sales org to sign contracts and to make sure that the deal works for both parties. Then when it's signed, they get connected with our logistics team and they do inspections, and our photographers go in, we do the 3D tours, we put listings up. Then they're transferred onto our site, onto our booking team. They could potentially have, contact with people on the booking team if they have questions about their listings, because we want to keep them really transparent and up to date with what's going on with their properties, what we ended up doing with them. And then, the experience team, so if they have issues or if they have payment questions or whatever. So it could be really messy if we didn't utilize technology to make sure that people are still having a really amazing streamlined experience. And a great example of this is Front. I mean, I really I couldn't envision our company working right now without it, because and we realized this actually before we used Front, that owners were really annoyed at having to have so many touch points, and residents as well, like people jumping in. It's really messy. You cannot provide a really great, amazing customer experience like at scale without using technology, unless you hire a million people. So it's just not really possible. So we heavily rely on that. And what else? I mean, yeah, automating maintenance requests, so tickets. So like when we sign properties, um, again, we used to work out of spreadsheets or out of just like random lists of, oh, did we remember to go do an inspection on the property? Did we, give the designers their video tours? Did we, schedule the warehouse and procurement to like put it, to like make sure that the warehouses have all of our stuff? Did we schedule movers? Did we do all these things? So we have automated task systems so that we don't need to like remember those things. We have a set list of items that have to be done. Everyone is accountable. And I think technology makes it be so that you can have accountability at scale as well. And we definitely see that with a lot of the tech that we are using. And another huge way that we will grow in the future, and it will be integral to our business, and it kind of already is the Internet of Things, which is that technology is making it possible for us to collect data on how people are living and how people want to live and will live in the future. We went to a really cool conference a little while ago on technology and real estate, and there were so many interesting products that people are thinking about as far as digital locks. Like entry is such a pain. Again, if any of you have ever had had to manage properties or had entry issues with your own rentals or properties that you own, entry is such a crazy thing. Like keys gotta go. We don't really know how they're gonna go. Like no one's fully solved this, but it's just so important being able to track what are people's lives like? When are they coming in? When are they going out of their property? Smart light switches. What types of can we predict which rooms people are in so that the lights are on at the right time? Smart home things, temperature things. All of these items will help us be able to be in front of like how are people currently living? What are trends we see that maybe people don't even realize, like ways that they're living in these spaces that they don't realize? And how can we, build something better? And how can we build a system, a business around, again, living as a service? All these things are really important.
Great, thanks, Julia. I think one thing you mentioned is this whole sort of balance between high tech and high touch. I wanted to ask Anderson actually this question, and as well as Joe. How do your products kind of, I guess, address that balance? How do you stay automated while being able to provide that human touch? Anderson, you want to start?
Yeah, I can definitely start first. So, when I hear about high tech and high touch, it really does sound like what we're trying to strive for here is efficiency without losing that personalization. We're like kind of that efficiency, but still like maintaining or striving for that VIP experience rather. And I think it's really tough for Julia because you guys are dealing with a two-sided marketplace, so the landlords and tenants, and so now you have like think about like one set of problems already, like now you have two sets that you have to operationalize. And so when I think about this, it certainly is an operational challenge. You have to rely on the strong technology to advance the efficiency of your organization and teams so that they can focus on the right things and deliver like that high touch experience. So I think like a physical metaphor that comes to mind is like an Amazon warehouse. You think about, I have just a huge inventory of products, and I need those inventory of products to like go to the right cars, to the right planes, to the doors, right? And so like they're relying on technology and these conveyor belts to just like move things to the right places, and like through that technology, they're able to deliver like high efficiency and deliver ultimately a great experience for their customers. So two things that come to mind. One, I think a little bit more specific to Front is start trying to breaking out of the limitation of the traditional team inbox. And I think this is something that Julia also touched on as well, right? Like understand that if you want to scale, you have to embed technology as part of your ecosystem or how you work. So sort of having worked close to the customers, I see so many different setups across so many different industries, but two that stand out is like either they share one Gmail account, like 10 people are logging into it, and they sort of like hack through like ownership or assignments through linking or folders, and it's really crazy. Or they switch to a ticketing solution, and in that switch, they're losing and sacrificing personalization. So Front is kind of like a really nice balance that balances out those sort of spectrums nicely by sitting in the middle. So the team inbox management aspect of Front allows you to consolidate all of these different channels that customers are expecting you to deliver great experiences to one, so your team can actually focus on delivering that great experience and making sure you're only focusing on one. And then this part is something that people also touched on today, so automation, right? How can we, like for our largest enterprise customers, the rules engine that Front has plays a huge role in shaping how teams work. Conversations are sort of alluding back to the Amazon reference there. Conversations are like being conveyed into like the right places and surfaced to the right people. So they, again, don't have to waste time sifting through 1,000 emails coming from a distribution list, but like can only focus or just refine their focus to only work on the things that matter for them. And so that everybody is moving the needle equally and together, as opposed to, some people moving the needle up and then moving back, and like now we're not getting anywhere. So that's at least sort of, how I think that our technology has helped businesses and our customers address the challenges and concerns of like high tech and high touch, and how you can actually find a nice balance to achieve that.
Joe, you have anything to add there?
Yeah. So one of the things that like strikes me, and just salespeople I talk to, especially in real estate though, is like as the customer side of things, as you're able to browse neighborhoods and sort of look up properties across the world, as that becomes easier to do, it just increases the pressure on the salespeople on the other end, because you sign up, you fill out a form on Zillow or whatever, and as the potential renter, you expect them to, it's like them to pick it up, right? And I talk to people in real estate that are getting leads coming at them from all directions, which sounds like a good problem to have, but if you're managing them in 6 different systems and you're using your memory, it's just like you end up hacking together some sort of system that's like kind of with duct tape, right? And so we mentioned it earlier, like the ability to integrate. That's one of the key things with Pipedrive. Like we have an integration with Front. Like we want to make it as easy as possible for, regardless of where people are coming from. They could come from referrals and the website, Zillow, Realtor.com, all these places. You want to be able to deal with them on your terms, build your own process, and that way you're not just wondering if I'm always missing out on something. So the personalization, the ease of customization with Pipedrive, and the ability to like just take leads from all sorts of places, whether it's you integrating with Front, or people will use the email parser with Zapier. There's all sorts of tools people use. You can really get it dialed in so that you can at least keep up with the increased pace on things, because it's just moving faster and faster. And the customer expects you to be able to deal with it if they're gonna fill out a lead and reach out to you. So that's sort of how we try to help people, is just like be able to build your own process that you're comfortable with, rather than having to log into 8 different places and deal with a different interface each time and check all these inboxes. Like, because yeah, I mean, it's great for the consumer, but it can become a nightmare if you're always thinking you're missing something. You're always checking in and waking up in the middle of the night. So anyway, that's how we try to approach it, at least.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Great, thank you all. So we're in the question part. We're unfortunately close to the end, basically at the end. So whoever has asked questions will get them answered. We'll send you the answer via email. One question I did want to answer that is from Ashley is, will the session be recorded and shared with the attendees? Yes, we will. We'll send you an email with the recording and a blog recap of everything that was covered, so you could read it or watch this again or share it with whoever you'd like. And the rest of these questions will get answered later. And yeah, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Anderson, Joe, Julia. Really, really appreciated it. I think this was a really interesting webinar, a really great discussion. And I have your emails here in case anyone else wants to contact and reach out and follow up about the webinar. But yeah, thank you all. Once again, I hope you all enjoyed this as much as we did, and we appreciate you attending. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.